So, I want to start out by telling you guys a little story about myself. One that most people find amusing when I tell them, but I think it's important in order to get my point across. So, in second grade, around Christmas time, there was a play happening at my school. And it had something to do along the lines of the penguins trying to take over the North Pole and trying to take control of Santa's workshop. Yeah, well, in this play, I had a role. I got to play as Rudolph. And I was so excited. I had my little antlers and I had red paint all over my nose. And I'm sure if you asked my mother, she would tell you I looked adorable. Well, on the day of the performance, I remember when my turn came to speak, walking up to that microphone, because, being second graders on the stage, we had to use a mic. And I remember looking at the sea of eyes staring right at me. And having the cruel reality of life kind of hit me at that moment. I was really bad at talking in front of crowds. Now, I'd always been a shy kid, so that wasn't that much of a surprise to me. But to have that feeling of fear, to be truly petrified at that moment, was a little heartbreaking, to be honest. It was so bad that after I finished stuttering over my words and I turned around to walk back to the place where I had to be, I was pretty much already on the verge of tears. Now, I'd had many experiences after that in which I felt that sense of fear and where I felt that petrified. But it's always this memory in particular that comes back to me every time I have to stand up in front of a crowd to speak. And because of that, it got me to think about it. And it led me to the realization that, in some weird way, I think we've all been Rudolph on top of a stage at some point in our life. Some of us have just been more preoccupied with walking up to that mic and getting that line just right, while others take a step back and realize they have red paint all over their nose. What I mean to say is, I think a lot of us have begun to become slaves over the words we talk about, have been so preoccupied that everything that leaves our mouth is exactly the way we want it to be, and that it comes to the audience in the most perfect way possible. Now, I'm not saying that worrying about your words is something bad, but when we focus so much on it, I think we start to lose a bit of the idea that's supposed to drive those words, a bit of the passion that's supposed to give them meaning. For example, a lot of the historical figures that we value for their speeches, we don't value for their speeches alone. We value them because they were walking incarnations of everything they stood for, and their speeches were reflections of everything they believed in. And they carried so much more weight because of that. When they spoke, it wasn't just the words we heard, it was the ideas behind them that made us want to hear more. Not even just in history, but in modern day when we look at political or religious figures, that we want to hear what they have to say because they have that sense of feeling that there's something greater than them, that they have that passion to share out what they want to say, that their words have meaning, and that makes us want to listen because it's not just the words we're listening to. Performers and actors, they don't try to become their lines alone. They try to become the best character for the lines, that together, when the audience receives it, they have a much greater impact had they just heard those lines. All this passion and all this desire is something that my class had to learn throughout the course of this year. As I'm sure you heard, we had to pick a topic that throughout the course of a year, we had to make a 15-minute presentation in order to show what we had for it. And I'm sure to some of you that might not seem like a lot. But honestly, initially, a lot of us were terrified. How were we supposed to talk for 15 minutes straight or as something we had a year to master? Well, as time progressed, we began to see how that topic shaped us, influenced the very thing we were doing, and gave us that sort of passion to be able to speak. As we moved on and worked on our projects, it wasn't just about that one presentation we had to do in order to pass. It was that one topic we felt impassioned towards talking about, that thing we wanted to share to people, about the journey we made, and about the experiences we had, and the lessons we learned. Throughout the course of the year, it wasn't just about the grade anymore. Not that passing was an afterthought, but when we saw it that way, I think our speech is greatly improved because of it. If you had given that topic to us a month before, I guarantee you would have vastly different speeches than the ones we had. For my topic, I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of individuals who place themselves in that sort of scenario, that they talk about talking, whether they be instructors or performers or debaters, and I got to hear their experiences and their stories and the journey they made to where they are now. And there was no one clear or concise way of putting it. For some, it was just throwing themselves at the wall over and over until something broke. And for others, it was a much more gradual process, something that they had to ease themselves towards in order to truly become proficient at it. But the thing that stood true for all of them was the fact that when they had those moments of fear, when they inevitably faced that embarrassment, they didn't look just at that. They looked at the passion they had towards what they were doing, and they didn't let the fear overshadow that passion. It's what allowed them to look at their mistakes and improve from them. Too many a time I've heard people say that I'm a bad speaker, that I can't say something because I'm not good enough, that I have nothing worth sharing. And it's because of those experiences that they've held, or they've had that feeling of embarrassment, and not wanting to go through it again. They're content with just saying they're a bad speaker. But it's that same mentality that impedes their growth, that stops it from being the best it can be, because they don't allow themselves to look at those mistakes as something else. I stand before you today for an organization that believes that there are ideas worth spreading. And throughout the night, you've heard a multitude of stories throughout a bunch of people and their perspectives, because they all felt they had something to share to you. They could have had the idea that they didn't have something worth sharing, that they weren't a good speaker. But as you could tell, that wasn't the case. They felt they had something to tell you, and that their voices needed to be heard, that they had an idea worth spreading. And it's that mentality that I want to leave you with. For the next time you're placed in that sort of scenario, to look beyond the words, and to look at the things behind them as well, the thing that should be driving them, which is you, and the passion you hold them, the thing that should be giving them meaning. To remember that you define those words, and not the other way around. Over 11 years ago, I stood up in front of a stage, dressed as a reindeer, ready to cry. And now today I stand before you to tell you everything I've learned after that point. And now I can confidently say that this time, when I turn around, I'm not going to cry. Thank you.